Welcome back. All right, I want to talk about the Vancouver Canucks today. I want to take a look at their lineup, and we can have the debate about what they need to add come deadline time. There's a lot of discussion about whether or not they need another center, which, I mean, you can never have too many centers. I've talked about that on this channel before. That being said, I think Hedl is probably better than some people might be giving him credit for. I remember when that kid line was a driving force for the Rangers. Okay, you had Kakko, Lafreniere, and Hedl. They were fantastic together. And I really thought they should be elevated in the lineup. Now, of course, Hedl's had injury issues, and that is a concern. That with Hedl, he may very well be one hit away from being on the shelf for a long time. Yes. But he's not the only player that is in that situation, and there are players who have played and managed to overcome those kinds of setbacks. So I don't mind Hedl as the number 2 center for now. I think that's going to be the plan. My only concern is don't trade this year's first round draft pick to get it. And I understand that this year's draft is not considered to be as deep as previous drafts, but I've seen too many occasions where a team trades away a draft pick and you hear, well, it's not a great draft, and then that first rounder still turns out to be a very good top 4 defenseman or a very good top 6 forward. And the argument is always to like, well, that's going to take years. Not always. Sometimes it's like the second season after they're drafted, they're playing a substantial role. So I'd rather that they didn't move more draft capital, but could it happen? Absolutely it could. So the top line last night was DeBrusk, Pettersson, and Besser. DeBrusk, 18 goals and 31 assists in 52 games. Jake DeBrusk is a very streaky player, and I knew that from Boston. He's showing that in Vancouver as well. But if you can get a guy who's going to score you 25 to 30 goals in a season, if he's streaky, but that's still 25 to 30 goals in a season. Pettersson's numbers are underwhelming. Yeah, 11 goals, 22 assists for 33 points in 46 games. One thing people overlook, and I know it doesn't excuse the contract, is Pettersson's very good defensively, and he's good at drawing penalties. He's good at getting other teams to go to the box. So there's those arguments for him as well. But he does need to put the puck in the net more. He admits that. He says that he hopes everybody's keeping a close eye on him. He welcomes the challenge. So there we go. Brock Besser not having the kind of season he did last year, but we understand, and I mean, I did the video early last season on how the Canucks run was kind of unsustainable, which had a reaction that I could have predicted. But Besser's totals have fallen back to a more normal total for him this year. 16 goals, 17 assists, 33 points in 45 games. So with Besser, the question mark becomes, he's a pending UFA. Do they move him before the deadline? Do they try to move him to address a need at center? And then the problem becomes, if you move him, well, now who's your goal-scoring winger here? It's not going to be Garland. It's not going to be Sherwood. So then you're creating another potential need, right? Unless Lekkerimaki ready to play that kind of a role, but I don't think he's there at this stage. The second line, Dakota Joshua. He has 93 hits in 27 games. But last season, he was great with the puck, and this season he's been fighting it. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points for Dakota Joshua. And, I mean, we can have the conversation about Joshua at some point if it continues to trend like this. I think he's a physical presence, a good player. Should he be in the top 6? Probably not. I'm going to say probably not. And that's one thing with the Canucks that is notable, is that they do not have the depth that a lot of the other top teams in the West or the East have. Then you got Hedl, gets a goal in his first game in Vancouver. He's not a physical player, of course. Garland, 52 games, 14 goals, 20 assists, 34 points. I didn't put a hits total on the board for him because he doesn't have 50. I was like, 50's the cutoff. So for Garland, but Garland doesn't shy away from the physical part of the game. And for a smaller player, he definitely plays bigger than his size. Is Garland a top 6 forward? Sure. I'll say, yeah. Then you get to that third line. So you got Drew O'Connor, 1 game with Vancouver. He had 51 hits with Pittsburgh. So O'Connor is capable of being physical. I think he's a good player. And it'll be interesting to see what his trajectory looks like in Vancouver compared to what it was in Pittsburgh. Pia Suter's having himself quite the year. 14 goals, 10 assists, 24 points in 51 games. He's on pace to shatter his goal-scoring record. I think 15 goals is the most he's ever had in a season. He's got an outside chance at 20, right? So Suter, I think, has been good, and I think when he's been needed as the second-line center, he's responded pretty well. I don't think that ideally that's where he is. I think ideally he's third line, but there you go. Kiefer Sherwood, still very popular in Vancouver. 13 goals, 9 assists, 22 points in 48 games. 281 hits. It's ridiculous. The number of hits he has is absolutely insane. He hits everything that moves. These are legitimate hits, and it's what he does. He goes out and he hits everything. So when he's not scoring goals or points, he's still hitting everything, so it's all right. Then you got Höglander, 4 goals, 8 assists, 12 points in 48 games. 55 hits for him this season. Höglander's offense has been unpredictable. Last year he had a great regular season and has had his struggles this season, which happens to everybody. For Höglander, fighting his way through that and fighting his way out of the doghouse with Rick Tocchet has been the goal, and I think he's done well. I think his play over the last, I'd say, 3-4 weeks is better than where it was earlier on in the season. But he does need the puck to go in the net a few times for him to really get his confidence back. And if he could start producing like he did last year, well, then you can bump him up the lineup, and all of a sudden your need for a top 6 forward, while it's still there, isn't as bad. Then you got Teddy Bluger, 52 games, 5 goals, 12 assists, 17 points. 72 hits for Teddy Bluger. 72 hits. Bluger, I've loved his game throughout his career, and I'm so glad that he's a Vancouver Canuck. But yeah, 72 hits for him. And then Linus Karlsson. 1 goal in 8 games for Linus Karlsson. I'm glad he got his first goal. I think he's a useful forward. Also, notables here when it comes to the hitting side of things. Phil DiGiuseppe, 54 hits for him. And Ratu, 53 hits for him on the season, which is remarkable considering DiGiuseppe and Ratu have not played every game for Vancouver. So the hits totals are pretty high considering how many games they've played. If you hear a cat meowing in the background, that's Azrael because the door is closed. She cannot handle that reality. She wants it to change. But for me, for the set, it's important that I keep the door closed so that people in the house realize I'm doing video. All right, so Quinn Hughes on the blue line, who is currently day-to-day, and of course that's going to panic some people. But it's part of the reason why I was impressed with how they played last night against Detroit. They were without Quinn Hughes. When Hughes was missing earlier in the season, they were lost. Last night, they looked a lot better. So he's played 47 games altogether, 14 goals, 45 assists, 59 points. And it doesn't sound like he's going to miss much more action if he misses the next game at all. Then you got Hronek, 31 games, 2 goals, 12 assists, 14 points. He played well last night. I think his play has been better since returning from injury. Marcus Pettersson made his debut last night, just the 1 game. But he had 1 hit last night, which means his total for the season is 58. So he's got a chance to hit 100 hits. And maybe he does. Maybe that excitement of playing for a new team, maybe he goes out and throws some hits over the next few games. Tyler Myers, 49 games, 3 goals, 13 assists, 16 points, 57 hits for him. A lot of negativity towards Myers. I think he's fine if you don't use him too much. And I think because of injury, the Canucks at times have had to use him too much, which exposes the weaknesses in his game. But overall, I think Pettersson, looking down at all the Petterssons here, Myers, I think Myers is fine. I honestly, I don't mind the Canucks having Myers there. His cap hit's fine too. And then you've got Elias Pettersson, the defenseman. 3 games, 1 assist for him. Nice to see him get his first NHL point. I think Pettersson's a smart player. I watch zone exits with rookie defensemen. That's the thing that I watch. So one thing I keep an eye on when I'm watching the games is if I know it's a young defenseman with the puck, where does that puck go? How does he look at the ice? Does he just blindly throw it up the ice? Or is he looking? Does he have a good idea? Does he do the little twirl you do to get away from that forechecker? Does he have that confidence with the puck? And Elias Pettersson, or DPD, the other DPD being Marcus Pettersson, I think he's good. I do. So while we can joke about all the Petterssons, I think they're going to stick around. The Canucks are going to talk to Marcus Pettersson about an extension this week, and that's the plan with Drew O'Connor as well. So they're not planning on making them rentals. Which I did see a lot of comments of, well, they've acquired 2 pending UFAs. This is a terrible trade for that reason. If you keep them both, it's a good trade. Juleson has no points in 35 games. And I think of all the players on Vancouver, Juleson probably gets the most dislike for his play from fans. But he has 101 hits. He's a physical, very defensive defenseman. I'm not saying he's a great defenseman by any stretch. He's playing third pairing minutes. Should they have other defensemen in there? Maybe. But the reality is that Rick Tocchet has his vision for how the team should be and what the roster should look like on the ice. He's the coach. Forbert, 4 assists in 26 games that he's played. He's a good fill-in. Soucy seems to have fallen out of favor. 2 goals, 6 assists, 8 points in 51 games. 76 hits for Soucy. So, Soucy seems to have fallen out of favor at this point in time. that can change. I mentioned Hoglander. There's others that have fallen out of favor with Tocchet during the season, and that can turn around. The concern I have with Vancouver, if we're going to talk about this team going forward, is will Demko ever be the kind of goaltender he was when he was being talked about for the Vezina? Will that ever happen again? His numbers are 4-6-3 with an 873 save percentage. My answer is I don't know. Because of the nature of the injury that he's going to just have to play through. I really don't know what to expect with his numbers, or if he's going to be able to adjust his game so that he's really and truly a starting goaltender and a top 10 goaltender in the National Hockey League. Lankinen, 18-8-7 record, 904 save percentage. He's good. You can't overplay him. And that's something the Canucks have been guilty of at points this season, too, because of the Demko injury and because they just don't have that level of depth when it comes to goaltending that you want from your National Hockey League team. Shilov's had a good run in the playoffs, but this season, early in the season, it was clear that he's not quite up to NHL level at this point. So he's getting the games in Abbotsford, and we may see him back. I would think if there's an injury, we might see Shilov's get a start if one of the goalies gets hurt. Outside of that, it's probably going to be next year. We'll see what the plan is with him going forward. I think it's a good lineup. I don't know if it's a playoff lineup. And that's the tricky part. I don't know if this is a team that I can look at and say, well, clearly they should pass the Flames. Considering the Flames just added Farabee and Frost and how good they look, I don't know. But either way, I think the Canucks have done the best they can in a bad situation. And it will be interesting to see how they trend the rest of the season. Like I said, they had a good game last night. They lost the game, but they had a good game, I thought, against Detroit. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, what would you change? What would you add? Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.